Hey everyone, just wanted to sign on real quick and address a couple things. First and foremost, thank you so much for those school psychologists with disabilities who signed up and taken part in the Disabled School Psychologist Survey and revealing their workplace experiences. It certainly means a lot. I know it's not easy to do. Me, myself, being a person with 3 disabilities, it has been an extremely long road for me. And I think that it's probably been an extremely long road for you too to get to this point where we're actually talking about being disabled in school psychology, which shouldn't be too hard to do. But, unfortunately, with the stigmatization and with the minoritization of black, brown, and disabled people within our profession, it's not always easy to break through and be the first front runners of that. Secondly, what I wanted to address real quick is, the ongoing support and emails that I have received regarding the NASP invited documented speaker session that I performed on being a disabled school psychologist. Just in brief, I'm not going to go through the whole session here, but I grew up and I was initially retained in kindergarten, and the whole plan was for me to be, to sit in the corner and to color for months at a time until the end of the year because I was not progressing with my peers and I was very slow at learning, and I continue to be. And that was the plan, was for me to spend March until June coloring in the corner and then to retain me. Of course, my parents didn't really opt for that. They wanted me to be included with my peers. And so I was included with my peers, and eventually I was placed into a resource room by 5th grade because retention doesn't work, as we know. And, that resource room only provided so much help, and I eventually went on to a 504 and continued to struggle learning throughout high school, but I always had my grades up because my mother and father, were helping me out and personally tutoring me. My father was tutoring me for 4 hours a night in math alone, plus eventually we did get me a tutor, and then after that we moved on to, I always stayed after for school since 6th grade, and those sort of things helped me, staying after school, having a tutor, having my father. All those sort of things kept me out of special education. But in regards to, what I took from that was a lot of being made fun of, as you know, and as I revealed in my documented session, because I was just so slow at learning. So I did want to address a couple things that, I did say during the documented session and maybe where we left off. And the one thing is that, obviously, as you might know if you saw the documented session, I was never accepted in the school psychology programs. I interviewed twice. I was eventually accepted to Niagara University. Niagara University overlooked my graduate records exam scores, thank goodness, and they did a wonderful job understanding my needs as a disabled school psychologist and advocating for me, and they've been a great support since the time I stepped foot in that university to when I left. But that didn't mean that Niagara couldn't protect me from what was to come in doctoral schools and the denial that I would face getting into doctoral school, which is why, if you know and you follow me, you know that I independently had to publish 10 studies and write 3 books just to have a shot at getting into doctoral school, because all these doctoral schools, with the exception of the University of South Florida, were looking at my graduate records exam scores. They were fixated on the graduate records exam scores, in which ETS at first denied me accommodations. I was retested. I was once again confirmed to have ADHD and a learning disability. But, doctoral schools continue to use the GRE as a metric, and they continue to fixate on it, which has held a lot of people back that are minoritized, not only people with disabilities, but I believe from the Black community, the Hispanic community, the Asian communities. And it is hurtful, it's extremely hurtful that doctoral schools continue to abide by ETS and that the field of school psychology continues to follow their lead when they have done so much harm that ETS has actually had a lawsuit on them by the United States government that was settled by the United States government, saying that you were being discriminatory towards people with disabilities on the graduate records exam and denying them accommodations, which I have experienced from ETS for over 10 years now, and then denying them accommodations on the praxis exam. And so I made that privy to NASP, I think, during my presentation as to, why we should not have them as our sponsor at our events. They are a platinum sponsor at the NASP conference. I don't think NASP was aware that there was a lawsuit or how much difficulty people had getting their accommodations, truthfully. I just don't think it's known. But if you do Google the search, and you do a Google search, you can certainly find the federal lawsuit against ETS online. And I will stand by my statements in that organization has no belonging in school psychology practice, or anywhere, because they have never apologized for their actions towards the disabled community in December of 2002. But I don't want to dwell on that. What I want to dwell on is, thanking you guys for the support with the survey. But I didn't get to finish, in my presentation. I kind of left everybody hanging because, I had a lot to say. On what are the action steps? Like, what are we going to do now that the disabled school psychologist community is out there, so that people like me don't have to write 10 independently published scholarly articles and publish 3 books, 2 with the top publishers of the world. And I'm not saying that as a bragging point. I'm saying that as a point of concern. If that's what it takes to get a doctoral degree or get into school psychology, we have a drastic problem. It should not take somebody 3 books, 10 scholarly independent publications, a mental health counseling degree, a school psychology degree, a 4.0 GPA, 10 years of practice across state, hospital, and agency settings, and a damn pandemic to get into the field of school psychology as a person with a disability. It just shouldn't happen. And I know this is happening not just for me, but for other minorities. So, really what it comes down to is the problems start early for people that are minoritized, and they start with oppression within our school systems, and it's a systemic problem. So I'm going to touch upon some points that I didn't get to in my presentation. And, the larger presentation is certainly documented, and of course I give it on the side as well to state and national organizations. But really, these are the take-home points that we didn't get to. Number 1, we need to eliminate retention. We need to eliminate retention because it is harmful. It is psychologically distressful to students. They take it with them. They harbor it with them for their whole life. I know I have. I have not forgiven the school district that has retained me. It was improper practice. I didn't have a choice. I was denied my access and my civil right to a general education curriculum based off of an opinion that retention would work, at a time that maybe the research wasn't great. Now we know that the research is out there that retention doesn't work, and there needs to be full accountability for school districts who continue this practice and professionals who continue this practice, because it's absolutely unfounded and harmful, and we know that it doesn't work. And, I know there's not an answer to everything, and I know that we had a pandemic, but we do need to look into fostering and supporting multi-tiered systems of support efforts and making equitable changes through database decision-making and multi-tiered systems of support preventative practice model framework. Nothing is perfect, but there are certainly better options than retention, okay? And if we're practicing that, we have really given up on the child. Number 2 is we need to really rethink how disability is presented and explained. In my presentation, I gave an example of why the bell curve came to be. The bell curve is divided into quartiles or into sections so that we can show desirable traits as deemed by non-disabled populations and Francis Galton, and the complete elimination of people with disabilities, right? It was to show that people with disabilities are not wanted, and that their lower cognitive abilities or maybe some of their deficits aren't wanted. So therefore, we sterilize them. So if you look at the bell curve and it's divided and you flip over your protocols with the WISC or WJ or whatever it might be, you notice that the bell curve is divided. It's divided to show that these traits are desirable and some traits are undesirable, and it was used at that time for a sense of, under Charles Darwin, it was evolutionary purposes. We're gonna sterilize the disabled so that they can have kids, so that these traits don't continue in humanity. That was the whole point of the bell curve. So we really do need to rethink that as a field. And I don't even know if the testing companies are aware of that history, but I think that we need to redo that. We need to utilize a strengths-based instead of deficit-based approach in our profession. We are all too much focused on deficit-based thinking. We need to let our profession be school psychologists in the schools. We don't need them to be testers. I think that goes without saying. I'm not going to waste too much time on that. You're all great professionals. We know the good work you do. I want to see more of it. I don't want to see you testing. I want to see you out there helping kids out, helping minorities out, helping them change the world today. Okay? At the graduate school psychology level, what I really do want to see is more incorporation for the disabled culture into diversity, equity, inclusion efforts. I don't think, a lot of us have a voice, number 1. Number 2, if you have an invisible disability, there is really no disabled culture. At least in my mind, there isn't, because guess what? It's not like I'm going up and seeing a ton of people with ADHD or a learning disability around, or even in chronic pain, because I'm in chronic pain as well and I have a back injury. What culture do I have? I keep on hearing that we have a culture, but I have never encountered the disabled culture. It's more with severe visible disabilities from what I've viewed and experienced. I would love to be part of it, but oftentimes it's non-existent for people with invisible disabilities. We need to teach about disabled history and struggle more within our programs at the graduate level. Section 504 in ADA almost didn't happen. Section 504 was vetoed twice by President Nixon. We need to let our students know that. They should know about it being vetoed. They should know that it almost didn't came to fruition, and they should know that it took a state sit-in by Judy Heumann and the Black Panthers helping out to get this whole thing passed that is Section 504 today. Our students do not know that. They need to know about Willowbrook, and they need to know about the Willowbrook State School and why that happened and occurred. Okay? We need to reflect on why school psychology was founded. And was founded on the basis of not testing, was founded on the basis of prevention. Look up Whitmer's early works. He wrote the New York Times on testing and his I guess, for lack of a better term, disagreements with psychological testing being an overarching power. Now, there's a time and place for psychological testing. We're not denying that, but Whitmer was like, we're overemphasizing the testing. We need a more holistic approach. He wrote the New York Times editor on that. We need to focus on dual marginalization more of the Black and disabled community and the Asian disabled community. We have done a poor job at that so far. We need to know their experiences. I would love to know their experiences. If you're Black and disabled, if you're Hispanic and disabled, certainly you have a story to tell that none of us really know. And I'm sorry that it has to be that way or had to be that way. I think the profession needs to provide leverage and a voice for you. We need to be transparent about admissions criteria. One of the things that I experienced is even after trying to get into doctoral school with all the publications I had, a number of universities remarked now that I am too old or that they don't have a route for me to take. Number one, they said, you're too old. We typically take students who are in their 20s to, younger 30s. But now you're like 40, and number two is if they didn't come right out and say that, the more common answer was, we would love to have you, Gary, but we just don't have a place for you because you already have a master's degree in school psychology and mental health counseling, and our program does not have a spot for people that already have an advanced master's specialist degree. So really we're practicing ageism within the field that hasn't been really talked about yet, and I think that's a huge deficit. And I think that there's so many good school psychologists out there that are practicing that are, maybe 40, heavens forbid, if you're 40 or older in this field and you want to go for your doctorate, you should be able to. You should be able to go for your doctorate. We are shooting ourselves in the foot. We don't have enough doctoral level school psychologists. We don't have enough licensed psychologists. Why aren't you able to go for your doctorate at an older age in this field? Somebody get a hold of me, answer me. Why are those routes not available to us as older individuals? USF has done a great job doing that and making that available. So University of South Florida is great. They've done a great job fostering and acknowledging that deficit within our field. I wish more programs would follow their lead. My biggest gripe, as you know, is consider eliminating the GRE and eliminating all associations at the national level with the Educational Testing Service. I don't think NAS knew about those before, but I'm calling on NAS now to really make a move and state what was happened to disabled people was wrong. We don't know how many disabled people were not allowed into the field by ETS because maybe they didn't get their accommodations on the graduate records exam, or maybe they couldn't graduate from their school psychology programs because they were denied accommodations for their praxis exams. Again, there is a lawsuit. It's a federal lawsuit. It was published. It's finalized. The United States Department of Justice brought it against the Educational Testing Service. You can read about it online. The Educational Testing Service never once apologized for their lawsuit in 2022 towards the disabled populace. They think that what they did was right. I will tell you it's absolutely deplorably wrong. And we need to certainly stop focusing on a testing score if we are a field that is welcoming equity, diversity, and inclusion. Right? We're teaching our students that, hey, we want equity, diversity, and inclusion in this field. And I've taught I've taught graduate school part and full-time for 7 years before going back for my doctorate. But we teach our students equity, diversity, inclusion. We want them to have that. But then we also teach them to use a variety of data points to get to a point of whether a person's disabled. But then we take only one score of the GRE and we weight it so heavily that people can't get into graduate school, and we deny minorities access to our field. What are we teaching? What are our students learning? What they're learning is the hypocrisy within the field, right? And I don't want hypocrisy in this field. This field is too good for hypocrisy. So I think that is something that every school should look at, and NASS needs to look at, is if you're preaching equity, diversity, and inclusion, and you're preaching validity and reliability, is ETS and the graduate records exam really something you want to hang your hat on and have as your platinum sponsor? And I don't think, like I said, it's not a fault of NASP. I don't think they're aware. I'm good friends with a number of people in NASP, but I think it's a great organization. The work they do is good. I think we're trying, and I don't want people to get on their high hat like maybe I did, but I do want to see some action from the field on holding this organization called ETS accountable. I think that we need to also recognize that diversity or disability is diversity, and we haven't done that really. And I think that's probably what led to this stigmatization. So anyway, those are the areas that really I think are needed in the field. I wanted to get this out because I wanted to thank people for taking part in the survey. Continue to take part in the survey. You'll find it in the comments. But also I wanted to hit on the points that I didn't get to in my presentation. I don't want to take up your time, but there it is. So I got it all out there. It's all out there for you to see. Hopefully no one's too offended, but as a person with a disability, it is pretty offensive to be denied accommodations from the graduate records exam and be retained from the field of education, and then to have teachers tell you you're stupid, and then to have professors tell you that you can't write because of your graduate records exam scores, then when you're trying to go into doctoral school and you can write. I think that's part of where the frustrations, I think, if you heard that in my voice, that's where it comes from, because it's very hurtful to be a minority in this field. And I'm only a white male with a disability. I can't imagine what black and brown and Hispanic and Asian people have went through trying to get into this field, and I'm truly sorry if you ever had to go through something that was similar to my own. So anyway, if you want to see the presentation, I'm available for talks. I got Louisiana conference coming up on MTSS. I'm doing a talk there. I'm doing the MTSI conference in New York State. And then after that, right around there, somewhere in between there, actually, I'm doing Mississippi State Conference of School of Psychology for MTSS. And then, of course, I give this talk as well. So I'm not too hard to find. I'm out here. Thank you so much for listening to me rant, and hopefully this provided you some information that you didn't get at the documented session, but I would love to present to you on this topic and give the full presentation if you are so interested of being disabled and trying to get into school of psychology, which has been quite the journey, but I'm happy to be here now, and I'm very happy NASP allowed me to speak on it, and I'm extremely honored that they let me say what I had to say. What a move by the organization. This just shows we're making moves. I think we're making moves in the right direction. Thank you and goodbye.